Now that I got my technology fixed, I think we have a quorum, so we can just get started. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the annual business meeting for the City Plan Commission. My name is Kevin Smith with Planning Inspections. To members of the public that may be watching, the Texas governor has allowed us to do teleconference, video conference meetings due to the pandemic, and we're grateful for this opportunity via technology to use this. If there was anyone who is going to be calling in or is using a telephone and would like to unmute themselves, they'll press *6. Otherwise, for members of the audience, those who are attending, please, again, mute your microphone if you're not speaking to avoid any background noise interference. With that, I will turn it over to Elsa Ramirez to do a roll call of the City Plan Commission. Thank you again.
Good afternoon, City Plan Commission. This is Elsa Ramirez with Planning and Inspections. I'm going to call roll in order to establish quorum for this meeting. Commissioner Cabrera.
Present.
Commissioner Cummings.
Here.
Commissioner Trimble.
Present.
Commissioner Hernandez Sigarista.
Present.
Commissioner Uribe.
Present.
Commissioner Guzman.
Present.
Commissioner Garcia. Commissioner Quinn.
Here.
Okay, we're good, Kevin.
Thank you. I think we turn it over to Commissioner Cummings as he's chair.
I'm going to call the meeting to order. Good afternoon and welcome to the January 21st, 2021 meeting of the City Plan Commission. My name is Chris Cummings, chair of the commission, and I'll call this meeting to 1:33 p.m. Have any changes to the agenda?
Yes, good afternoon, Robert. So there are no changes.
Okay. Could I get Commissioner Cabrera to read the statement to the public?
Yeah, just give me a sec here. I have it. I got it last week. Let me find it.
I've got it here if you want me to read it.
Yeah, it's taken forever to find it here. I apologize.
No problem. The statement to the public is the City Plan Commission has sole and final approval authority over subdivision maps. Although the Commission is final authority with respect to subdivision approval, this authority is statutorily limited to a ministerial examination of the application's conformance to all applicable codes. The staff report for an agenda item may include conditions, exceptions, or modifications. If the Commission does not wish to approve an exception or modification or require a condition, then the Commission's motion will state which have not been approved. Otherwise, the staff report with all modifications, exceptions, and conditions is approved, and the applicant shall comply with all provisions of the staff report. All agenda items other than subdivision items will be conducted in the form of a public hearing. The chairperson of the Commission may allocate and limit the time of persons speaking before the Commission. The normal process is as follows. First, the Commission will hear a staff report, followed by a statement from the applicant. Then members of the public may speak, followed by any final statement from the applicant. Finally, the matter will be closed and the discussion among the Commission. The Commission shall then make a recommendation that will be forwarded to City Council. And I will also read, do we need to read the call to the public? I guess so, right? This time is reserved for members of the public who would like to address the City Plan Commission on any items that are not on the City Plan Commission agenda and jurisdiction of the City Plan Commission. No action shall be taken. The The sign-up form is available outside City Council chambers for those who wish. On the day of the meeting, requests to speak must be received at 30 on the day of the meeting. A total time of 5 minutes may be allowed for each speaker. The public comment portion shall not exceed 30 minutes unless otherwise approved by the City Planning Commission. Do we have anyone signed up?
No,
Don't.
I believe we do not have anyone.
Okay. Then let's move on to the meeting. Item number 1, CPC business items, election of officers.
Okay, good. Again, good afternoon, members of the commission. Kevin Smith with Planning Inspections. So this item is typically held at our business meeting, and actually with Ms. Livingston, her term expiring, and Mr. Quinn, again, we welcome you to our meeting. We do have a vacancy for the chair, and so this is an opportunity for the election of the chair of the City Plan Commission, a first chair, and a second chair. The chair is typically the one who presides at the meetings and runs the meetings. They ensure that order and decorum are kept, and they can be present at city council meetings to represent the City Plan Commission. But that honor can be bestowed actually to any member of the City Plan Commission. But with that, we do have a vacancy for a chair, and I would defer actually to probably Russell Ablin, our city attorney, for how this takes place. So Russell?
The vacancy for which chair? Sorry, can you repeat that, Kevin?
Yeah, so actually we have a vacancy for the chair, but we have the annual opportunity to elect a chair, a vice chair, and a second vice chair.
Okay, I would leave it open to nominations for those positions.
I'd like to nominate Chris Cummings for chair.
Is there a second?
I second that nomination. This is Commissioner Hernandez.
Any other nominations?
Anybody that wants to do it?
All right. Take a vote for the nomination for Chris Cummings for chair.
So Elsa,
Well,
I guess those in favor
So,
of Chris Cummings
yeah.
as chair?
So Kevin, Chris Cummings is the first chair, so then there would need to be a nomination for the first chair. Because
Correct.
Samuel Trimble is the second chair.
Correct.
I nominate Sam
Vice Chair.
Trimble for first chair.
I second that. Come on.
All
We have
those
a
in favor?
nomination. So we have a
So that
nomination
opens up-
of Chris Cummings as chair, Sam Trimble as first chair. And
Yeah,
that will leave
opens
us
up
with
second chair.
I'm sorry?
So yeah, that opens up someone else for.
Someone opens up for a second chair.
That's so funny.
I
nominate
Mr. Hernandez Igarrista for.
No, thank you. No thanks. No thanks. I don't want to do it. I've already done it before. So it's either up to Juan or Mr. Cabrera. They've been
I'm
around.
not-
Okay, I nominate Mr. Cabrera for second.
Yeah. I'm not sure how much longer I'll be on this board, to be honest with you. So,
Same here. I'm almost termed out too. So
yeah.
Just in order of tenure, then I'd nominate Commissioner Guzman as second chair.
I second.
there you go.
Cummings.
Okay, so we have nominations for first chair of Chris Cummings. I'm sorry, of chair Chris Cummings, first chair Sam Trimble, and then second chair of Jose Guzman. Elsa, can you do a can you take care of the vote, please, Elsa?
So the vote will consist of what, Kevin? Because we had a first and a second for all these nominations.
Yes.
Probably the easiest and fastest way would be to ask if there's any abstentions, right? Instead of having to try and figure out who's saying.
Is that right, Russell? Not sure.
Um,
Or do we just, or do they just say, you know, if everybody is in agreement with all these nominations?
I would just take a roll call.
Take a roll call just of who's attending this meeting, or?
No, of the proposed nominations.
Yes.
Of each one?
All things.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
so
I
let me.
think you can do it all together,
Yeah.
unless anyone has any
That's why
issues.
we've done it in the past. I think.
Okay, let me see. So then I'm going to call on the vote for, okay, hold on, let me vote for the chair. Okay, so the vote for the chair is for Chris Cummings. And I just need to get whether they're aye or nay, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, so Commissioner Cabrera, for this, and this is for the chair vote for Chris Cummings.
I vote aye for Chris Cummings as chair. Cabrera.
Okay. And I guess I don't take Chris Cummings' vote, right? That doesn't, since he's the, or does he vote?
For himself.
Commissioner Cummings,
Aye.
Commissioner Trimble,
Aye.
Commissioner Hernandez,
Aye.
Commissioner Uribe,
Aye.
Commissioner Guzman,
Aye.
Commissioner Garcia is not here. Commissioner Quinn, looks like he stepped away. Commissioner Quinn?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next vote will be for the first chair, which is Sam Trimble. One second. Okay, I'm going to call your names and just give me your vote. Commissioner Cabrera,
Aye.
hold on, I ran out of room on my laptop here. Commissioner Cummings, Commissioner Cummings, I'm taking the vote for Sam Trimble, first chair.
Aye. Sorry.
No problem. Commissioner Trimble,
Aye.
Commissioner Hernandez,
Aye.
Commissioner Uribe,
Aye.
Commissioner Guzman,
Aye.
and Commissioner Quinn.
Aye.
Okay, the next vote will be for the second chair, which is Jose Guzman. Commissioner Cabrera,
Aye.
Commissioner Cummings,
Aye.
Commissioner Trimble,
Aye.
Commissioner Hernandez,
Aye.
Commissioner Uribe,
Aye.
Commissioner Guzman,
Aye.
and Commissioner Quinn.
Aye.
Okay, that takes care of all the votes for the three positions.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
On to item B, changes to the bylaws. Kevin.
Yeah, again, good afternoon. Again, I'd like to congratulate Chairman Cummings, Commissioner Trimble, Commissioner Guzman for your newly, I guess, elected offices. So in regards to the bylaws, this is an opportunity for us to update the bylaws as needed. We work with our legal team as well. So what we want to do is staff just has one change and then just some minor amendments we'd like to propose. And if the City Plan Commission is agreeable to that, we will bring it forward officially at a future City Plan Commission where you all can see the red lines of this, as well as if you all have any amendments as well, that this is the time to discuss that. The major change that staff would like to propose is actually regarding to the public comment. So the time in the bylaws right now state that members of the public may speak either on call to the public or on agenda items for 5 minutes. So what staff would like to propose is to reduce that to 3 minutes. This is in line with what City Council does, and generally we found that about 3 minutes is a time that a member of the public may be able to get their point across regarding a proposed agenda item. Again, it is up to the City Plan Commission if they want to extend or reduce that depending on the number of members of the public that would like to speak. But that is the change that staff would like to propose to the City Plan Commission. All the rest, other changes, there are very minor and they're not substantial. So, but that is the one that we would like to propose.
I would be more than happy to go along with that because it ends up like 3 means 5 and 5 means 15. But as far as, when we've had a significant amount of people, which is fantastic to have that type of engagement with the community and that type of involvement. But when we've had a significant amount of people, it gets pretty lengthy, I think, for everybody. So I'd be more than glad to go along with that. And then I think 3 minutes is still is a good amount of time to have an opportunity to speak. I don't feel like that's limiting it too much.
Russell Ablin, Assistant City Attorney. Another thing is, I don't think Kevin and planning staff are even aware that we're thinking about, going through all boards and commissions and reviewing all the bylaws to make things more uniform across boards, and then do that to create kind of an onboarding curriculum for new board members for all the boards. So having a consistent 3 minutes across the boards and city council would be helpful. And there's always the option if somebody wants to continue speaking, that the board can allow them more time. So that's just another consideration.
Thank you, Russell.
Do we need to vote on this item or is it just informational?
Right now, it's just informational. If there are no real objections, what staff will do is we'll work again with our legal team to finalize the amendments, and we'll bring it forward for official action at a future City Plan Commission within the coming weeks.
Sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome. But if there are any other suggestions or comments in regards to modifying the bylaws, that would be a good time from the City Plan Commission.
Anyone? Looks like we're good.
Okay, sounds good. Well, we'll bring this forward in the near future. Thank you all.
Thank you. On to item number 2, update on capital projects.
Good afternoon. This is Jerry DeMuro, Assistant Director of Capital Improvement. I'll give you an update on the capital program for the year 2020. This is the same update that we gave council at the end of the fiscal year. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah, we can see it, Jerry.
Okay, thank you. As I said, my name is Jerry DeMuro. I'm Assistant Director of Capital Improvement. Today, I'm going to talk about the history of the capital improvement program, accomplishments and highlights, active project status, and what we're calling the revised rollout. Let me get this to act like a slide. There we go. So the capital program aligns with the strategic plan, but through the enhancement of El Paso's quality of life through recreational, cultural, and educational environment, as well as enhancing and sustaining El Paso's infrastructure network. During the early days of the capital program, 2015 to 2017, there were a number of factors that affected implementation of the CIP. I'm getting feedback if everyone who's not speaking can mute. We made little progress on the CIP implementation between 2012 and 2016. Oftentimes, funds are reallocated for uses for other projects, and a number of measures were not taken to preserve road pavement in good condition. Our cost estimates didn't fully account for all scope items, and the schedule never accounted for property acquisition. Between 2018 and 2020, we became dedicated to a culture of continuous improvement, accountability, and ownership. City Council took greater oversight of the CIP implementation by funding community priorities. We updated our scopes, estimates, and cleaned up old projects. We placed controls in place for scope and schedule compliance. We updated processes and procedures and provided training. And management and staff continuously working through to improve production results of the program. All of a sudden. We often show this slide when discussing the capital program in that we're working on our improvements. We have more experienced project managers. We've implemented processes to ensure the projects stay on track. We're evaluating the performance of our vendors, consultants, and contractors to make sure their performance is consistent with city expectations, and those that are not consistent will no longer be afforded opportunities for contracting, or it will affect their ability to contract with us. We have support staff to help us with the accounting and contract compliance. And we rely heavily on user departments, stakeholders, administration, service departments, and the public input. So I'm going to go into the 2020 results. So I talked about how things kind of got a slow start. If you look at 2015 to 2017, we contracted for $152 million worth of work. And between 2018 and 2020, we contracted for $471 million. And the difference is $318 million or 308%. So you can see how our modifications and dedication to continuous improvement allowed us to do more. These are requisitions and encumbrances for fiscal year 2018, 2019, 2020, and so far for 2021. You can see that between 18 and 19, there was a significant increase, and those projects that were encumbered in 2019 were actually physically constructed between 2019 and fiscal year 2020. So you see fewer encumbrances in 2020 than you do in 2019. Expenditures in 2018, we expended $80.4 million. In 2019, $138.9 million. In 2020, $137.3 million. And to date, for fiscal year 21, $19.7 million. We often look at our progress in terms of what the impact of our spending is on the community. $1 million of construction costs involves roughly $500,000 in labor costs. So approximately $68 million was spent on labor costs. Jobs supported. We support a number of jobs In fiscal year 20, we supported over 8,000 jobs, and overall, since the beginning of the capital program, we've supported over 34,000 jobs. I'm going to pause here for a second because I neglected to turn my sound on, and I have a video coming up. So let me unshare, and then I will go back and reshare. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, we can
thank
see
you.
it.
My apologies. So spending and employment, direct spending of impact on employment was 19.7 million, indirect and induced 11 million for a total of 31.5 million. The direct is construction spending. The indirect is more those that are supported by construction, that the construction supports, such as other vendors and services that are needed by the construction companies. We've used over 272 contractors and subcontractors. And the projects that we're managing, 328 projects have been managed since 2018. We often look at our projects, whether they're in design, whether they're in bidding, or whether they're in construction. And you see in 2020, we had a large number in construction and a fewer number in design and bidding. The projects are all over the city. You can see this by the distribution of it on this map. And this is the video. So this is our, coming up here is what we have currently active. So for, you can see what we had active in pre-design. Pre-design is when you're scoping out the project or conducting surveys or environmental impact assessments prior to beginning design. And then we have design, construction, and total projects 254 in November of 2020. Because of COVID and the economic impacts on the city, yes, Mr. Cabrera, you have your hand up? You're muted, Mr. Cabrera. Do you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just the display just cut out, but I don't know if I was the only one.
You mean the video?
After the video, I didn't get the display. It says there's a display content error.
So you can't see the screen right now?
Correct.
Okay, let me stop sharing and reshare. Do you see it now?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much.
was on this slide, I said because of COVID, we had to defer some projects. And we made a decision as a city that what we would do is we would look at the projects and the stage that they were in. If they were in pre-design, we would probably suspend them until economic conditions are more favorable. If they were in design and would not add any significant operating costs to the city, we would complete the design and construction. If they did add operating costs, we would simply complete the design and not move the projects into construction. There were also some projects that were ready, that either had bid or were ready to bid, that we shelved before taking them to bid. There were a total of, in May, 75 projects that were deferred. That number was reduced to 68 by the end of the year. Project summary, FY20, we completed 62 projects. We resurfaced 385 streets and reconstructed 43 streets. Street resurfacing and reconstruction are shown. This is street resurfacing. The emphasis of the street resurfacing program is to complete neighborhoods. Initially, when the street resurfacing program rolled out, it was kind of, the selection was all across the city. So the contractor would have to move equipment from one location to the other. And you can see over time, we began to cluster, that's the green, we began to cluster within neighborhoods to give complete neighborhoods. This is an active project map. It's either an active street or trail project, or the green dots are future, the green and red dots are future projects that are upcoming. Pre-design in September to November 2020, 3 projects started pre-design, 2 advanced to design, 1 advanced to bidding, 5 to construction, and 1 was deferred, and 1 project was deleted. These are the projects that are in pre-design. No, I'm sorry, they're not in pre-design. These clinics have been finished or will be finished by the end of the month in construction. These are some of the other ones that are in pre-design. You'll see the fire station assessments. As part of the public safety bond, there is $74.4 million for fire station renovations. So that we could get a handle on what was needed at each fire station, we conducted an assessment of each fire station and the building's condition. We are now going through and prioritizing those improvements so that we can initially start with the stations that need the most work and trickle on to those that need the fewest amount of work. So 3 projects started in pre-design, 2 advanced to design, and 1 advanced to the bidding phase. 5 projects went to construction. As I said, here's the city clinics, as well as the food pantry. 1 project was deferred. The deferred project was a storage and maintenance facility for Blackie Chester Park. We opted not to do that because it really doesn't add anything for the public. It's more of an internal thing. And then city building renovations. Active pre-design projects. These are the active non-deferred projects. They cover the airport, they cover the zoo, they also cover public safety as well as quality of life. These are projects that we are moving through design, but we will shelve them after the design until the economic conditions are more favorable. In design, we had 5 new projects, 20 advanced to bidding, 6 to construction. August 2020, we had 112 projects. August 2020, something's not right here. I don't know. I'll just move. So projects that were in design, you see a number of projects, including the Children's Museum, the Mexican American Cultural Center, the main library, most of the library branches, as well as some of the recreation centers, parks, and pools. Five projects were added to the design phase, improvements in Pueblo Viejo Park, as well as trailheads at a number of locations through the city. Projects that advanced to bidding are some improvements to HVAC at City 1 and City 2, a pocket park, Cleveland Pocket Park, Leo Cancellara Pool, Modesto Gomez Park. 6 advanced to construction. There's 1 library renovation, bridge reconstruction, some airport improvements, and some improvements to the vehicle exhaust systems at fire stations 37 and 5. 5 projects were deferred and shelved. The Cohen Site Readiness Project was deferred. The Joey Barraza Play Structure, which was a very large all abilities playground. The Tom Lee Slope Stabilization, the slope is stable at this time, and the need for it for safety reasons has diminished. It is intended to complete when the economic conditions get better. In addition, we had 2 parks, Wainwright and Northeast Basin. 1 project was completed at the zoo. And so active design projects, we had 88 total active, 45 active non-deferred, 44 active to be deferred. These are the non-deferred projects. Again, you see some parks, you see some planning documents, you see some animal and dog shelter projects. These are the projects that are being deferred. One that stands out quite a bit is the Eastside Regional Park Phase 2. That would add significant operating expenses to the city as a result of additional championship level fields that would need to be maintained quite rigorously to maintain their championship condition. So those are the projects that we opted not to proceed with. Eastside Sports Complex is very similar to that. At present, the Mexican American Cultural Center is going to complete design and it will be deferred. Other projects that were deferred was some road reconstruction, the Sun City Lights program, and some median and landscape improvements. Other projects that were deferred include citywide wayfinding, Manhattan Heights Historic Archway illumination, a Brio station at Montecillo, some road reconstruction. In bidding, we had 32 in November of 2020. The projects that are in bidding include bicycle connectivity, pedestrian enhancements, improvements to the landfill maintenance barn, some sports field lighting, and some park and HVAC improvements. Others included animal holding cells, the Armijo and West Side library improvements, parks, and pools. One project was reactivated from the deferred list. This is the Northgate Transit-Oriented Development floodplain mitigation. In that area, the land is currently in the floodplain, and a project is going forward to raise the elevation of that area so that transit-oriented development can occur within there that'll feed into the transit station, which is right next door. Projects that went to construction, we did some roofs, Student Memorial Park improvements, and the aircraft rescue and firefighting. Active bidding, these are projects that are currently in bid. And then these are bidding but deferred. You'll see a neighborhood traffic management improvement program, a couple of parks, some reconstruction, and some road reconstruction. Construction in November 2020, we had 80 projects in construction. The projects we have in construction included some park improvements, the water parks, which are being wrapped up this quarter, some airport improvements, roadway reconstruction, some park improvements. Other projects that advanced to construction in 2020, again, libraries, the city clinics for COVID response, fire stations, and some park improvements. These projects are currently active in construction. So we have some street reconstruction, we have some park improvements, the clinics, and some bridges and the water parks. And these are some of the other ones. These projects were completed: the Cat Adoption Center at the zoo, the Chamizal Community Park, reconstruction of Holly Street and James Street, some zoo improvements, the Memorial Park Library expansion, a pilot program for green infrastructure at some of our parks. That was a water harvesting project, some lighting improvements, street signs, and again, some roadway reconstruction. So when I mentioned before a revised rollout, so we put a number of projects on hold as a result of the economic impact of COVID. We've been looking at those projects and looking at ways to bring them back online. And a lot of that will be brought back online by the city's refinancing of debt so that we can borrow money to be able to complete some of these projects. Right now, we can refinance for a much lower interest rate than we could a year and a half ago. For the revised rollout, we're committed to public safety and streets, and we need to reduce our cost and lower our budget. That means we don't want to bring a lot online that will add to operating costs. I know this said no debt in fiscal year 21. The debt would be basically a revision of or a refinancing of our existing debt to free up additional capital. So we won't add to the debt level that exists currently in fiscal year 2021. And then as projects complete design and funding is available, they'll be evaluated and moved into construction. We also are taking a very positive stance on federal and other grant dollars. Most of our federal programs, these would include roadway and street and bridge improvements. The federal government usually funds about 80% and the city matches 20%. So we try to leverage the federal dollars to get more done. So how much money can we borrow? We want to borrow for public safety, the federal grant program, any contractual obligations we have, streets and facilities maintenance. We have not determined how much that is going to be. Public safety, at present, we intend to take into construction Fire Station 36, which is here on the west side, the East Side Regional Command Center, fire station remodels, design of the police department headquarters, and design of the academy. The academy is a joint academy between fire and police, and the campus includes the fire department headquarters and also the fire department logistics center. The streets, we hope to complete the streets that are currently on the 2012 CIP and any of the federal program facilities. Again, funds to be borrowed in future years. To complete everything that has been approved, we need about $622 million. An amount to be borrowed is to be determined. And that's the extent of my presentation. Does anyone have any questions?
Appreciate that info and those updates. Thank you very much.
And my apologies for the video not working properly. It worked yesterday. I tried it.
It worked on my end and it was great. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, on to item number 3, the park fee special fund report. Ms. Chavez.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Carla Chavez. I'm a project manager for the Parks and Recreation Department, and I will be presenting the annual Parkland Dedication Report. Let me share my screen. So, can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can see it, Carla.
Yep.
Thank you. So the Parkland dedication projects align with the following strategic goals. Number 3, promote the visual image of El Paso. Number 4, enhance El Paso's quality of life through recreational, cultural, and educational environments. Number 7, enhance and sustain El Paso's infrastructure network. The Parkland Dedication Ordinance was adopted in 1989. For residential subdivisions, the amount of parkland required to be dedicated is 1 acre of parkland for every 100 single-family units, or 1 acre of parkland for every 200 multifamily units. When an area of parkland less than 1 acre is required to be dedicated, the city accepts a cash payment in lieu of parkland dedication. The fee calculation is as follows. For single family and 2 family, $1,370 per dwelling unit. For multifamily, $680 per dwelling unit. projects are designed and built following parks design and construction standards. The city is divided in 5 park zones areas: Northwest, Mission Valley, Central, East, and Northeast. In total, we have 48 park zones. The parkland dedications by acres by year. In the fiscal year of 2019, we accepted for maintenance 4.6 acres. In the fiscal years of 2020, we have accepted 22.16 acres. Parks completed in 2020 and added to the park systems is Eagle Vista, located in District 1, Enchanted Park in District 1 also, North Desert in District 4, Winners Parks in District 5, Holy Springs Linear Park in District 5, and Sueños Encantados Park in District 5. This is one park that was completed in 2020 and added to the park system. Is North Desert Park, located at 10505 Hidden Pond Street. This is another park that was completed in 2020 and added to the park system. This is Holy Springs Linear Park, located at 14600 Holy Springs Street. Parks under construction and expected to be accessed for maintenance in the fiscal year of 2021. We have 11 parks, and most of them are in District 1, District 5, and District 8. Park zones cash total. In the fiscal years of 2019, Parks Department received $215,364. In the fiscal years of 2020, the Parks Department received $295,155. Of the Northwest Park zones, we have received, since the ordinance was established, $2.6 million, and we have allocated $2.4 million, and the total unallocated is $218,000. In the Central Zone, the total received is $8,200,000. The total allocated is $572,000, and the total unallocated is $9,000. For the Mission Valley, the total received is $1 million. The total allocated is $919,000. The total unallocated is $93,000. East Park Zones, the total received is $2.8 million. The total allocated is $2.4 million. And the total unallocated is $329,000. For the Northeast Park Zone, the total received is $1.9 million. The total allocated is $1.6 million, and the total unallocated is $262,000. Parkland dedication funds disbursed based on proportionality of basic amenities that should be provided to all parks, like canopy over the playgrounds, playground equipment, swing sets, picnic tables, benches, trash receptacles, bike racks, trees, irrigation, security cameras, and fencing. This is one of the parks that was improved in 2020 with Parkland dedication funds, Inca Dog Park. And we did a new playground, new rock wall, and new safety surface. Parks to be improved in 2020 is District 4, Colonia Verde Park, new canopy over existing playground, and at District 5, Spanish Castle Park, new canopy over existing playground. So any questions or comments?
Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
I do have a question. This is Commissioner Guzman. I see all those parks. How or who can we start asking about lighting? I know there's a big issue with lighting with all the teams playing, as far as soccer teams, baseball teams, and football teams. There's no lighting after, especially right now. Sun goes down at 5:30. Kids are practicing there in the dark. How can we start working, or who do we have to ask for more money to get that going? Is that something for city council or?
Actually, Commissioner Guzman, this is Ben Fife, the Director of Cultural Affairs and Recreation. I would just request some clarification. Are you talking about lighting infrastructure, or are you talking about getting the lights that are in those fields turned on?
Well, no, actually lighting in the parks. I mean, if you go to all the parks that we just saw, I don't see that much lighting. I mean, so that's something that I personally was a coach for many years for kids, and we had big issues, and it's like in every single park, there's not enough lighting. So I don't know who would be in charge of that, city council, you guys, or how can we get that ball rolling?
So actually, I will let Carla address the specific ways that those projects are funded. But I would just share that at the moment, since October, we actually do not turn on lights in any fields right now because the Office of Emergency Management, working with the health department, has put a pause on outdoor sports in parks.
Yes, and of course, I'm talking post-COVID. I mean, once this is all done and everything, I guess at some time, all those kids have to go back to sports. So that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, yeah, there's two programs that the city has, CDBG and also NIP programs, also parkland dedication. So we can, you can go with community development and submit a citizen request for a specific park that you would like to see more lights. And also is the NIP program, and for the parkland dedication funds, we can see if we have enough money to improve lighting in the park that you're speaking of. So you can send us an email to myself, and I can forward the information to community development for the CDBG funding in NIP program.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot for your presentation. I'll get with Kevin to get your information. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll get you two in touch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is item 4, activity report by the Planning Division.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon again, Kevin Smith with Planning and Inspections. First of all, just want to say thank you to each of you for serving on this committee. I've told you all before, and I fully believe that the City Plan Commission is the second most influential board or committee within the city of El Paso. This is obviously behind the city council, but the decisions that are made, the recommendations that are made, impact the way we live, impact the way we work, impact the way we play here in the city, and we have the opportunity to really change, influence the way of life. So I just want to thank each of you for taking up your time to assist us in these efforts. So there are 3 items that are subcategories, if you will, of this item here about the activity report. So to start off, Raul Garcia and myself will give a brief overview about what the department has done in response to COVID, as well as some of the statistics that have come in through planning inspections. After that, we'll pass it off to our zoning administrator, Ann Gallante, who will give a brief overview about some of the history of planning. So we really wanted to change it this year to really boil down the basics about, what is planning. And then after her presentation, we'll pass it off to representatives from each of our 3 divisions within planning, our long range, our zoning, and our subdivisions sections, who will then go over their respective areas. And a lot of it you already know, but a lot of it is important to go as a refresher. So Karina Brascala, Ann, and Nelson Ortiz will be presenting on their respective sections. So with that, let me share my screen to pull up the first part that Raul and I will go over. Okay. So you should all see my screen now. So again, this is just a brief overview. So in response to what has happened to COVID-19, in short, for our department, planning and inspections is we've remained operational. We made adjustments, and we are here to deliver our services, or these essential services, to our customers. After items go through here through planning, they go to building permits, and that is still fully functional. We have our inspectors going out every day to inspect the residences and the businesses of the city. So in terms of what we've done here within planning and inspections, we've done it in, if you want to call it, in 3 different categories. One is just the safety, and this is going on through much of the community. We have implemented health screenings. We have what are called magnometer temperature stations, and those are similar to metal detectors, where you walk through and it automatically says what temperature you have. We put up plexiglass barriers to create a barrier between ourselves and our customers. We've changed our work schedules and increased the opportunity for our staff to telecommute. Many of the staff that are presenting typically on the City Plan Commission, they're presenting from their homes, just to reduce the presence of in-office. And part of it too is, as we look at how we serve it, we've sort of had to rethink. We used to think, hey, everyone is here in the office. We've been able to work with our IT team and been able to telecommute. We've changed because of our one-stop shop. This gets to the next point about our customer relation representatives. They are typically there to assist our customers as they walk in. With the one-stop shop currently down, it has increased our calls, and so we've repurposed them to take care of those calls, so we continue to assist our customers. People still need to make improvements to their properties, and we are there to assist them. We've also used to, a lot of our submittals were done with physical copies. So you have a set of plans, okay, bring the paper copy in. We've retooled, working with our IT team, to have more electronic submittals. And that has also reduced the interaction we have, just to try keep our community safe and keep the numbers of COVID-19 down. And also, one of the things that we've done is, as we're doing right now, is working virtually. We're able to meet with our customers, have consultations virtually, where we get to meet, we get to see plans, we get to have important meetings such as this one held via Microsoft Teams. And we're grateful that we have this opportunity to keep working, keep having these communications as we deliver these services. And these are just some of them, really the highlights. But in short, the work is still going forward. Items still come, at least for the City Plan Commission, items still come that properties need subdivided, people want to rezone their property, detailed site plans come in, and a whole bunch of others, and we're still able to perform those services. We're still able to review plans. We're able to perform inspections. We're still here and open to the public, and we're grateful for this opportunity we have to serve. the citizens of El Paso. With that, I will pass it over to Raul Garcia, who will go over some of the case activity that we've seen here in planning inspections.
Thank you, Kevin. So and good afternoon, everyone. Chair Commissioner Raul Garcia, Planning Inspections. I'm going to now quickly go over our case activity for 2020. As you know, the events of 2020, the pandemic did affect our numbers. So I'll be sharing that information with you here. So as you can see here, these are the numbers for our planning related applications. These are applications that usually include some type of public hearing that include public hearing processes either to this commission, CPC, as well as City Council and ZBA, the Zoning Board of Adjustments. And as you can see, comparing year 2019 with last year, 2020, there was a drop in case activity in these type of applications being submitted. In terms of percentage, as far as specific types, that ranges anywhere from a 10% reduction for subdivisions to a 26% reduction for zoning related applications. So again, as you can see, the events of last year did have an impact on our activity, although we would have maybe liked to see a little bit less of an impact. However, it's not at the level that is unsurmountable or nothing that threw us into any type of panic mode or anything like that. So again, overall, we did look at about 1,600 applications last year, and that reduced down to approximately 1,300 submittals, or 1,600 submittals in 2019, which was reduced to about 1,300 submittals last year in 2020 for an overall 18% drop. Next slide, Kevin. And this graph here shows the same type of information, however, for our planning applications that do not require any type of public hearing or have to go through any type of public process. These are our daily applications that come in pretty much on a daily basis. We're talking about legal nonconformings, planning determinations, zoning verifications, shared parking agreements, things that are typically processed either anywhere between 5 to 10 to maybe 30 working days, and are processed administratively. And as you can see here, we also see the same trends. Again, a reduction of approximately 18% compared from 2019 to 2020. Again, we would have liked to see maybe a less impact, but again, nothing that is gonna cause any type of panic at this point. And looking forward, we are hoping for an improvement over next year or this new year, 2021. Next slide, Kevin. So just to touch on a few things that we're looking for in this year. Next slide. And these are items that will be coming before the commission and will ultimately end up with city council action. So, and as far as the code amendments, that is going to be a focus this year. The commission has seen the phase one, the first phase of these code amendments, which was a pretty straightforward, just kind of a cleanup type of changes included. That was presented to CPC earlier last year, and we are going to move those forward here to City Council here in the near future. And again, those changes do relate to Title 19, our subdivision code, Title 20, our zoning code, and those will be staff-led. Phase 2 and Phase 3, which will be more in detail as far as the changes, those are forthcoming, and again, those will be brought before the commission, and then ultimately City Council will be the final authority there. We're also looking at changes to Title 21. I believe a consultant may be assisting us with those changes. But again, in line with what we're doing with Title 19 and 20, we're also looking at those changes to be bringing them forward to the commission and then ultimately to city council. So as far as staff, these code amendments are something that's key. It's going to be our number one focus for this new 2021 year. And then also, we want to, I know this is something we've discussed in the past, but some training items for the commissioners, some planning related training. So hopefully we provide the commission with some information that helps them understand maybe their role and how the decisions the commission makes impacts the city and development as a whole, and why we bring those items forward, why we have those type of applications, why we have rezonings, why we have subdivisions, things like that. That'll provide some good information for commissioners. I know we have one item today in terms of planning history, and so those are the type of items that we look forward to bringing forward to the commission. Again, just as an informational, educational basis. And I think next slide. I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it for Kevin and my portion. If there's no questions, we'll move on into our section specific presentations.
Actually, hi Raul, it's Chris.
Hello. Yes, sir.
In the training section ideas, it took me quite a while to kind of even comprehend, and still it's not always clear, the difference between preliminary subdivision or long range plan or whatever, the different things that we're approving. When somebody comes on, I think it would be, even if they're just taken aside and given a 30-minute training about what the different meanings are of all the things that we do. Because, it's good to get your, learning on the job, except, and we have a commission that can all vote and kind of direct the motion of how this goes. But having a basic understanding, I think, when you're brought onto the board would be very helpful. Just wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, no, you're definitely on point, Mr. Cummings. And actually that is something that we've implemented. And I think our newest member, Mr. Quinn, can attest to that. And it's actually something that we've been doing now. I'm not sure if we did it with you, Mr. Cummings, but we have been doing it for at least year and a half, these past couple of years, where when there is a new commissioner, I think we did it with Mr. Guzman as well. When there's a new commissioner coming in, we do make an effort to find the time to have a little sit down with them and go over, what kind of items will be coming towards in front of the commission. Again, to hopefully familiarize them a little bit better with the role of CPC and answer any questions they might have. And we can certainly, moving forward, continue that focus. In addition, with these training items, if there are any new members doing the same thing before their first meeting, having a little virtual, eventually a sit-down meeting with them and going over CPC and the role and any questions they might have.
Great, I appreciate it. I wouldn't mind a reminder, or next time we have a new member, I might join in and just get a refresher course.
Yeah. Feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to assist with any refresher or any questions any of the commissioners might have. Please do not hesitate to reach out to either Kevin or myself. We'd be happy to address and answer any of your questions. Yes, sir.
Thank you both. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and I think to go along with what Raul said, Mr. Cummings, I think that's something, if there are different ideas too, you may not be the only one with the same questions or need the refresher. So if there are ideas as we look at trainings for the City Plan Commission, if we just have to boil down and say, okay, let's simplify things. What is a preliminary plat? What is a final plat? What is a re-subdivision combo? All the different types, and that's just subdivisions. Then we're getting to the zoning items. It might be good periodically for us to present to you all, just a refresher. just to make sure, okay, hey, this is what we're talking about for a given application, given case that may come before you all. So like Raul said, if there's a need, either one-on-one, we're more than happy to make time with it. Or if it should be part of a larger discussion, to bring forward an item where we talk for 5 or 10 minutes, however long we need to, with the whole City Plan Commission, we'd be happy to do that as well.
Yeah, I was grandfathered for the the training, so to understand what a preliminary plat versus a final took me 6 months to figure out, and it's not good. It's not an informed commissioner, that
Right.
serving. So
Right. No, and actually, in terms of subdivisions, I think Nelson's presentation later on today will kind of provide some information on that. But yeah, moving forward, bigger picture, yeah, we are going to focus on ensuring that commissioners are better informed and better equipped to serve their role on this commission. Yes, sir.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we'll pass it off to Ann Gallante, who will go over a brief history of planning. So Ann?
Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. So we're going to go over this history presentation because it's very valuable to pass along the understanding of just what our purpose is, why are we here, and for the specific proposals that we bring for you for your review, why do things look the way they look? What has caused development to unfold the way it has over time. So with that, I'm going to share with you a brief presentation on the history of planning. All right. So in order to understand why we exist, we need to discuss what life was like before we existed. So there were some very important historical phenomena that resulted in life changing dramatically and rapidly in most of the industrialized world, or what is now the industrialized world, but especially in cities. So we had three simultaneous phenomena that really influenced a rapid population explosion within cities and created some pretty strong negative externalities. So first, we had simultaneous revolutions in the agricultural and industrial sector. The agricultural advances meant that we needed fewer people performing farm work to result in the same amount of food and goods being created. So we had surplus agricultural workers at the same time that we had just rapid expansions in our industrial technology that created many, many, many new jobs in our cities. So we had a mass migration from our rural areas to our urban areas because we had out-of-work farmers looking for jobs, and we had jobs in our cities. So this is what those factories looked like. Also, simultaneously, there were some global forces that were resulting in pandemic, in war, in famine, in some really terrible political and economic conditions elsewhere in the world that drove massive migration from many countries in Europe and a little bit beyond, and also resulted in mass migration to cities. So we had domestic and we had international migration to cities at such a scale that their populations were doubling rapidly. Like every 10 years, there would be twice as many people as in the preceding 10 years. And this resulted in some really, really fast or urgent needs for new housing to accommodate these people, new infrastructure to accommodate all the new residents in these cities. And these tended to be entry-level, low-skilled jobs, not high-paying. So what was expanding rapidly was housing to accommodate these workers. So, and these were people who didn't necessarily have the power to advocate for good working conditions, good housing, healthy environments. And so this resulted in some pretty ugly circumstances, which we're going to get into in a second. So what we saw was single family houses being divided, new tenement buildings being constructed. These were narrow, they were low rise, there was no plumbing, no ventilation, and a whole lot of people. And you would also have multifamily being chopped up into smaller multifamily as the need grew. So when you have that many people in that small of an area, you have some pretty ugly impacts, to include sewage, to include horse manure, because that was a primary mode of transportation at the time, cholera and typhus due to the stormwater runoff caused by said sewage and horse manure, and that got into the water supply and got people very sick. So here are some photos of what life was like. This was tenement housing conditions prior to the advent of some very important modern advances that include city planning. So you'll see that we have just a lot of wiring, a lot of people, a lot of pretty ugly conditions, and you also saw houses being built so close together that, you know, and you'll notice in the photo on the left that someone has dropped a bathtub from the upper floor of one of the buildings, and it has gotten stuck on its way down. So there was not adequate passage of air and light between these buildings. These were spaces that got full of weeds and vermin. So here's some more photos. Many of these come from a phenomenal work by Jacob Riis called How the Other Half Lives that was really, really catalyzing and causing a lot of change to come about to correct for some of these conditions. Here's some more. These are boarding houses. These house typically single male workers. And again, just more photos. So this brought really to the attention of people who could do anything about it how bad conditions were for many of our new residents in our cities. So what that brought about was some pretty rapid and sweeping change. We saw the advent of these large grand visions, these plans that were created and implemented in our cities, and also the rapid onset of new rules concerning basic sanitation and solid waste management, working conditions. We required that if buildings are not attached, that they allow for adequate passage of air and light, and that yards serve as yards, not yard and where you dump your chamber pot. So at any rate, neighborhood patterns during this time were largely oriented towards pedestrians because that's who they serve. That's how people got around. Population growth was concentrated within cities, and you typically had the most advantageous locations for major employers to be located on your waterways and your other mass transit at the time hubs. So those would be highway junctions, rail stations, and then you would have your supporting uses and your residents located within walking distance. Commercial businesses were typically embedded within neighborhoods rather than isolated from neighborhoods, and you had tended to have neighborhoods oriented around schools and parks. Street orientation, typically grid layout, and you had the alley functioning as your loading and service entrances for both residential and commercial. And so these are some of the grand plans from the time that ushered in just an incredibly rapid change to our cities. There was a strong desire to make them competitive with cities in Europe and beyond. So this is probably planning's most famous quote, Daniel Burnham: "Make no little plans, they have no magic to stir men's blood, and probably themselves will not be realized. Make big plans and aim high in hope and work, remembering that a noble logical diagram once recorded will never die, but long after we're gone will be a living thing asserting itself with ever-growing insistency." So we had in the mid-20th century another set of pressing phenomena that caused land use changes to change almost as radically as they did in the early part of the 20th century. So following World War II, with the passage of the National Highway Act, we had private automobiles taking over as the primary mode of transportation from streetcars and feet. And you also had the beginning of the separation of single family and multifamily neighborhoods. This was somewhat made possible by the fact that people could get further in the same amount of time than they could have with under their own power or utilizing public transportation. You also saw commercial activity grouping in large anchored shopping centers, and the grid street network replaced with a hierarchy of streets. And what I mean by this is a grid looks like graph paper, a hierarchical street network looks like a leaf. You have the little teeny capillaries joining the medium leaf veins joining the big stem. And so that's how a road network works as well. You have local streets joining collectors, joining arterials. You also started to see curvilinear streets now with small blocks. Lots got a little wider. Instead of having utilities and loading located in the alley, you typically in residential development started to see garages on the front, and you saw utility easements and corridors also locating on the street. Schools and parks were larger and further apart owing to the fact that more people could get there in the same amount of time in their own personal vehicles. So these were caused by the massive demand for housing following World War II. So this time, instead of the mass migration into cities, you saw a mass migration from cities to suburbs. Some of this was, there were demographic differences between who went where and and who chose to locate in what region or whose circumstances dictated they locate in what region. So as touched upon, this was the in no small part due to the development of the interstate highway system, which established a brand new network of highways all across the land with associated funding for those. So this really changed how we got from place to place and how far we could get. This opened up new areas to development, and it's still one of the dominant features of the United States. Also, during this time period, you saw a practice known as redlining. This was a practice of federally backed loans for housing to rank areas based upon desirability, upon the expectation that there would be return on investment. And this was used in the decision making to grant or deny loans for construction and improvement on properties. And there were they were explicit in that race played a part in the criteria of determining an area as desirable or undesirable. So if there was a significant community of non-white residents, that was considered a less desirable area. It was less possible to get financing for investment within that area. And so this had a strong impact on what areas in every city across the land were able to redevelop and to secure investment, and what areas were forced to stagnate through the lack of available funding. Also, you saw shopping malls caused by automobiles, caused by the interstate highway system. This had a profound effect on the previous commercial center, which would have been downtown. And these were typically developed in greenfield sites on the outskirts of town. So they had a very suppressive effect on our traditional centers of commerce and social centers, and caused a disparate impact. All right, and then these all tended to be indoors, and they're an internal pedestrian mall, meaning that there's an interior corridor primarily for pedestrian, ringed by a large sea of parking. These tend to require very large sites. And then we get into the late 20th century, where as time went on, new development was prioritized over redeveloping in existing areas, which caused growth to occur further and further from city centers. Because everything was so much further apart, more people had to drive in order to get from place to place, which necessitated larger thoroughfares. This necessitated an increase in the number of freeways between communities, even beyond what was brought about through the Interstate Highway Act. And you saw commercial activities being further segregated away from from residential activities. Again, with the hierarchical street pattern, you did see a decrease in lot size as populations grew in established communities, and cul-de-sacs became common within residential subdivisions, again with no alleys, and schools and parks continued their trend to grow larger and further apart. You had a couple of important federal phenomena during this part of the 20th century that really had a strong impact on public's perception of planning and public's trust of government itself. So urban renewal was intended to create a remedy for blighted conditions that were brought about due to the outward expansion within cities. You had neighborhoods suffering from disinvestment due to the preference for greenfield development, and also because of the aforementioned redlining. And so this resulted in significant loss of historic structures in city centers, and this had a strongly disproportionate impact on minority communities. And in certain cases, established and thriving neighborhoods were razed, and nothing to date has been built in their place. And this is something that did that did affect the public consciousness and perception of cities and of government in general. You also saw environmental justice arising as a movement. This is due to the industrial activity that was prevalent in the 20th century up until this time. So we began to see, especially over time, some pretty strong impacts associated, both locally and beyond, resulting from some of the chemical processes used in factories and their effect on air, water, and soil. You also saw a stronger tendency for facilities with negative impacts on their surroundings to be located in communities least able to defend themselves from incompatible uses. So you did see a political movement arise in response to this. And then we're going to look ahead to the 20th century. I want to highlight a couple of movements that we deal with now and we will in the future. So in the early 20th century, we began to see a conversation about new urbanism, about the fact that perhaps the way cities had been developed prior to the 1950s, for hundreds of years, there may have been something to that. There may have been a reason that has always been a sustainable model for development. And so you started to see a really deliberate movement towards returning towards that style of development, for advocating for the removal of recent regulatory barriers that stood in the way of mixed-use communities and mixed-use redevelopment of existing areas, and allowed for the replication of our places within our community that have been the most enduring and the most successful over time. Early examples include Seaside, Florida, and Celebration, Florida. These were master plan communities on new urbanist principles. Also, you see the rise of the complete streets movement. This involves an advocacy movement towards designing streets to accommodate all anticipated users rather than simply designing for the automobile. So if you're looking at residential streets or streets near schools, you're paying greater attention to the fact that these streets also serve pedestrians. In areas where you do see pedestrian activity, you're making sure that the pedestrian infrastructure meets the needs of all pedestrians. It's for all ages and abilities. It's for people in wheelchairs and people who do not have sight. It's for small children. It's for the elderly. It's so that everyone who needs to walk can do so safely. It's also recognizing that all infrastructure typology isn't necessarily appropriate and needed in all locations. If you have a very heavy industrial area that's all factories and warehouses, you're not going to need to provide the same level of pedestrian amenities because you don't anticipate a great concentration of those users. Similarly to how in a residential neighborhood, you're not designing to accommodate a lot of heavy trucks. We're also looking at another movement, which is sustainability, which has resulted from our increasing knowledge and understanding of the impacts of climate change. We're also not only looking at environmental sustainability, we're also looking at economic sustainability, just what's the most enduring over time, what's going to last the longest and serve us best, and also food access. You have in cities now areas which are called food desert, which means that within a reasonable distance, say a 15-minute trip, you cannot find access to choices of food beyond something that is unhealthy. You have neighborhoods that aren't served by grocery stores or with reasonable access to other places where they might procure fresh food. So this is something else that is increasingly being looked at, and we are increasingly considering from a regulatory perspective and from a programmatic perspective in cities across the country. And so that gets us from all the way from before we started as a profession to looking into the future and now. It provides some explanation of the rules that we advocate, of the existing rules and policies that we have adopted, as well as some of those that we may be bringing before you in the future. And if there are any questions, I am more than happy to share.
That was great. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Great presentation.
Nice presentation.
So thank you for that, Ann. The next item is, like I mentioned, is our long range, our zoning, and our subdivision groups going over an overview of their sections. And we'll start out with Karina going over the long range, and she will then be followed by Ann and then Nelson for zoning and subdivisions, respectively. So Karina?
Absolutely. Thanks, Kevin. This is Karina Brazgala. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm the Senior Long Range Planner. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here and then let me know if you all can see that. We all good?
Yeah, we can see it, Karina.
Okay, perfect. So this is really, Ann is covering the history of planning and kind of the foundation, historically and legally why we do what we do. This presentation is meant, to Commissioner Cummings' point earlier, a little bit more focused on what we are actually doing in El Paso, what, the terms that we're using and the things that we're looking at in our department. So just a quick, and then this presentation is there so you guys can go back and look at this, just of what is housed exactly within the Planning and Inspections Department. So we have our Building Permitting Division, the one-stop shop, and then within planning, we have zoning, subdivisions, and long-range planning sections, and then as well as historic. And historic is kind of a subsect of the zoning code. The planning division, so we implement 3 parts of the city code, titles 19, 20, and 21, as well as Plan El Paso, which is the city's comprehensive plan. A lot of that stuff involves, presentations to boards and commissions, development review with a variety of different departments. So we really do interface with almost every other department in the city. I'm hard pressed to think of one that we don't talk to on a regular basis. So, to Kevin's point earlier, this really is one of the most important commissions. Planning really is at the core of almost everything that the city does. And so with long range, we're going to kind of start with long range as the entry point here because it informs a lot of what we do in the day-to-day work of the zoning and subdivision section. And so we're going to just look at that. So really quickly, because you all don't see much from long range staff, I just want to let you know that we are in fact working. We do a lot of design review. We're in charge of the special districts and specialty programs. And because of the city's incentive policy, right, we try and streamline the development process for those applicants. So a lot of the work we do is administrative. And so we're looking at, like I said, the incentives programs, any of those special design districts, so Mountain Development, Union Plaza downtown, the RIM Neighborhood Conservancy District, as well as our smart code areas. I'll touch a little bit on smart code because I know it can be a bit of a mystery and you all do occasionally see those items here. So it's at its core, it's just a type of zoning district. It is intended to promote smart growth principles, which come out of that new urbanism framework that Anne mentioned earlier. So we're really asking for mixed use development. It's pedestrian oriented. It's meant to be walkable and higher density. And so the bulk of Title 21 really doesn't focus so much on uses. It's more interested in kind of what is the experience like in these neighborhoods and in these areas. We're looking at kind of density, at the flow, at the walkability, and not really so much about, you know, this area is residential and this area is commercial and here you have industrial. And then the major applications that we work with there are a regulating plan, and that'll function similar to your master zoning plans, but it does include also thoroughfare information, so our street designs, and then what we call building scale plan, which the closest kind of thing to it would be a detailed site development plan. So it's site specific, has information on parking, setbacks, landscaping, that kind of thing. So that would be for an individual building, and the regulating plan is for the smart code area as a whole. The major responsibility for the long range section is projects related to the administration and implementation of the comprehensive plan. So I'll give, you know, we just did a history presentation, so I'll give you guys a little bit of what exactly a comprehensive plan is in general, and then touch on some specifics from Plan El Paso. So the comprehensive plan should really be setting an intention for growth and development for a municipality. These can be citywide, these can be regional. You'll sometimes see them in smaller towns. But for whatever area you're working in, the idea is to guide the vision for a long term. So these are usually run for 15 to 30-year timeframes, sometimes longer. They get revisited occasionally, but the idea is really looking beyond, you know, the current council administration or the current staff that's here. It's really making sure that there's something consistent to look at over the next few decades. And so it is a guiding document. It's not regulatory in most cases, and leaves a lot of room for interpretation, flexibility, and adjustments depending on the specific situation. So your typical outline here, you'll usually start with some kind of mission statement, so why we're undertaking a comprehensive plan, and then do a little bit of background. So looking at the history of a space, the demographics, current conditions on a variety of topics, and then usually break into subject area analyses. So for planning, right, we're looking at the land use patterns. That can include things like your future land use map, your annexation policies, other development considerations. And then you'll also have sections on maybe urban design, transit, parks and open space, housing, utilities, community facilities, economic development, public health. I mean, basically anything that the government might touch or that a citizen might interact with in some way will be included in a comprehensive plan. So it's a really kind of broad scope. And so if you guys ever look at Plan El Paso, it is available online. It's like hundreds of pages, but there's a section on anything you can think of. There's some kind of guidance there for us to look at. So the major thrust in our plan is basically these 5 goals. So like I said, there's dozens and dozens of policies specific to many, many different things, but really overall what we're looking at in planning are these. So to encourage infill development over outward expansion, decrease car dependency, promote walkability and sustainability, and make sure that we're designing facilities and providing service to all citizens and all the population in our community, and then building a foundation for economic prosperity that increases quality of life, which you guys will notice sounds very similar to the strategic plan that gets brought up a lot. So there's that link there too. And as part of that, we work on a variety of implementation projects. So there's a couple, you know, several of the recent downtown developments have been taken wholesale out of Plan El Paso. The San Jacinto Plaza redesign, there's a rendering in Plan El Paso that looks almost identical to what's in place today. Things like our infill and transit-oriented development policies, of course, the smart growth areas. So smart growth was a big promotion in Plan El Paso. We did go ahead and adopt that as a code option and then rezoned several areas. Advances in our trail network, the Brio and streetcar, and then the comprehensive bike plan. So those are all projects that took place that we've worked on. And then kind of more broadly, we also work on implementation through the code. So through code and policy. So we're looking at the Title 19, 20, and 21, those amendments that we mentioned earlier, those were all, we looked at Plan El Paso to go through those, and policies come from there. Any study area plans, so there are a number of smaller area plans attached to Plan El Paso, the Upper Valley Plan, and a few others. So anytime a new study area plan would be created or any amendments need to be made, those get done through long range. And then, of course, we, like everything else in planning, giving comments to other departments, making sure that things that happen with streets, with CID, with Sun Metro, with our real estate office, with any of that, and economic development, that those are all kind of, we're giving feedback on how that fits into the comprehensive plan. When it comes to the development process that you all have a hand in, Plan El Paso offers some specific guidance on that review. So I'll go over that because I think it'll be really helpful for you all. So the first kind of part is a lot of what staff does and that we reference. You'll note in our staff reports, right? We note those little policy numbers for you all. So we're looking at the future land use map and related text to make sure that we're being consistent in the land use for that area and for the future planning. We're looking at other areas in Plan El Paso, and we usually work with our applicants there to see if we can do modifications or anything else to bring that project in line with the best practices and the recommendations in the plan. And then we're checking for other plans and policies, either outside of Plan El Paso. This is especially important in like the ETJ, where there might be, the county might have plans, or Horizon, Socorro might have their own comp plans. And so we want to make sure that we're being consistent across all of those, just to make sure that we've looked at all the options. And then these last steps, this is really the public hearing process. So number 4, assess the public interest. Again, Plan El Paso is a general guiding document, so there may be specific situations and circumstances that make the comprehensive plan recommendation not appropriate. This is why we sometimes see applications brought forward with an approval recommendation, but there's still quite a lot of neighborhood dissent, right? So it's the role of elected and appointed officials to consider that public input and make that decision in the best interests of the public. And that should be done by evaluating the information that staff presents, but also that the public presents, and to make sure that that final decision is appropriate for the area. And so, Plan El Paso really creates this framework for all of our development regulations, and then from there you get into the specifics of the code. And so I'll turn it over to Ann, and she can kind of walk you guys through what exactly we're doing with zoning and Title 20.
Good afternoon again. Thank you for bearing with me for one moment. I am going to present what zoning does. All right, so we're going to... Okay. So zoning regulates land use. It's essentially what you can do, where you can do it, and how. So what's allowed on each lot, where in the city you can do various activities, and it also refers to within your lot where you may place your building and your use. And then how you can do it, we also regulate through zoning things like parking requirements and signage, and we have additional standards for certain uses to ensure they're not harmful to their surroundings. So The what is largely governed by Title 20 Appendix A. This is our table of permissible uses. This tells us what you can do and where you can do it. Pretty easy to follow. If there's a P, you're great. If there's an X, that location is no good. If there's a different letter, you need to come talk to us because there's a process involved. B regulates the where. It's going to discuss things like your setback requirements and things like the maximum density permitted on a particular lot for particular use. And then how, we've got a couple of places that you would need to check to make sure you're doing your appropriate due diligence for your development. The first is in the supplemental use regulations. This contains standards for uses that without those standards could potentially have a strong negative impact on what's surrounding them. Also, you have your parking requirements. This is ever important because we do impose minimum parking requirements for all uses outside of our downtown area. So why have zoning? Some of that we covered in the history presentation. Zoning is what's considered a police function. It does, we do have the authority to limit your rights somewhat for the greater good in order to protect health, safety, and the general welfare. It allows everyone to do what they want to do on their property without harming anyone else, and there is enforcement. If you do things that violate the zoning ordinance, there are penalties associated with that, up to and including court. Zoning provides space for everything in a city so it can exist without harming or being harmed by its neighbors. We group the sensitive uses together. We group the more intense uses together. We allow uses to mix that can do so compatibly. It also provides for fire protection. If you have certain structures too close together without adequate construction materials utilized, you could get fires jumping from building to building, like certain, pretty negative historical incidents. This allows for the adequate passage of air and light, which is essential for making sure we all don't get certain preventable diseases. And it also allows for space for certain uses to occur. So zoning is something that since its inception in the early 20th century has had to defend itself in court to figure out exactly where its parameters are and establish that it is in fact a legal power for cities. So per Texas state law, cities may regulate development so long as they are consistent with their adopted comprehensive plan, which Karina went over in discussing long range's section and core responsibilities. There are also national and state laws and court cases dating back to 1909 that have established that cities do, in fact, have the power to regulate land use and have defended the legality of zoning as well as various aspects of zoning and define where our power starts and stops. So in El Paso specifically, we are looking a couple of places to figure out how we ought to zone and what sorts of changes we ought to allow and what sorts of changes we ought not to allow. So there's the future land use map, which is a really broad brush of what sort of growth is expected to occur where in the city. And any rezoning request that comes through must conform with the parameters of the future land use map. If there are instances where the future land use map reflects outdated information or assumptions of growth that didn't come true, we do allow for, on a case-by-case basis, amendments to that map to be considered. You do see those from time to time. Those are brought before you as comprehensive plan amendments. So we also, within Plan El Paso, in each section of the plan, it ends with goals and policies. It contained a list of recommendations to achieve the city's vision as set forth in that plan. And then there are specific recommendations within Plan El Paso for evaluating rezoning requests. We're not going to go through these all, but we're going to look just so you can see kind of what we look at. So this, when we bring requests before you, this is a lot of information, but when staff is recommending approval of a specific application, this is what we have taken into consideration in making that recommendation. So some of the high points here, we do have noted what we would consider appropriate locations for considering higher density development than what might be currently permitted. We also include as a criteria, do we get a more complete community for allowing this change? Does it allow missing uses into a neighborhood where they are not present, or whether they're sort of out of balance, where there's too much of one thing and not enough of another? Does this help create truly complete neighborhoods? Does this help us reach our stated goal of becoming a more walkable city? Are we connecting destinations to each other? Are we connecting residential neighborhoods to places where people might actually wish to walk? And then we look at also, very importantly, the impact of the proposed zoning district on its established neighborhood. And we have specific criteria as listed here that we would evaluate. And these are reflected in the tables and the staff reports that you guys see every other week. And so this slide here shows what the zoning section is responsible for doing. You'll note that there are items in yellow. Those are the ones that you see. And there are items in white. Those are the items that we handle administratively that don't come before you for approval. And you'll notice in light yellow, you see detailed site plans, because sometimes those are administrative and sometimes those go before you. So we spend a lot of our time just consulting with the general public on their dreams for their property. We let them know whether a location is suitable and appropriate, and if there are regulatory steps that they need to complete prior to realizing their goal. And so by the time something's been brought before you, we've been working with them very closely for a rather long time, and feel confident that if something that you see has an approval recommendation, it's well considered. We write a lot of zoning verification letters. That's telling somebody what their zoning is and if they can do the thing they want. Registering things as legal nonconforming, that's essentially grandfathering. It's, did you establish your thing legally before the rules change? We will verify that, give you a certificate if it's true in your instance. Shared parking agreements, we do a lot of review of building and sign permits, and we take items to the Zoning Board of Adjustments for increases in their buildable area, as long as they meet very specific standards as outlined in that board's regulations. And then you'll notice that on this slide, there's a 12-step process outlined, and this is rather simplified, but this is what happens, and this is where you fit into it. The City Plan Commission hearing is number 9 on this list. That means prior to getting to you, we have worked with the applicant to ensure that these 8 items are complete. And then following you, we create the ordinance and take it to City Council twice for its final approval. So this is all of the work that we do to ensure that when items get to you, they're complete, they contain the information that you need to evaluate whether something meets the standards approval would require it to meet, or whether it doesn't. And we've also heard from other reviewing entities to ensure that should City Plan Commission recommend approval and should City Council ultimately vote to approve the proposal, that it's something that can actually be built with all factors taken into consideration. And now we're going to go over the various roles in this process. So what staff does is we interpret the facts of the case. We figure out what standards we need to apply, whether the proposal is capable of meeting them, and we work with the applicant to make whatever changes are necessary so their proposal does meet the standards that it is required to meet. We also look at if there's a change proposed to the zoning for a property, we evaluate the request against the recommendation criteria that we went over a couple slides ago. We also look at the adequacy of infrastructure that would serve the proposed development, and we look at the standards of Title 20 to see if they're met. We work very closely with the applicant. We work with other development review staff. We visit the site. We provide the staff report to you. We present on it, and we prepare the ordinance, and we're responsible for ensuring that adequate public notice requirements are met. And I do want to touch upon this point a little bit because there has been some recent public comment concerning the public notice. So first of all, 2 weeks ahead of an item coming before this body, a letter is mailed to all property owners within 300 feet. This letter is in English and in Spanish. There's a template that we follow. The template is bilingual. So public notice is issued in both languages. If a site is larger than 1 acre, it gets a large green public notice sign, double-sided, also bilingual, both languages, both sides. We also advertise this agenda prior to this hearing, and we also require that the applicants tell any and all neighborhood associations that govern the subject property that they are planning to request this change. So by the time something gets to you, all of that notice has occurred, and anyone wishing to submit written comments can do so. Anyone wishing to speak at the meeting can do so. Anyone wishing to call us and voice their comments can do so. And any comments we receive are passed along to you as part of the presentation. And then, so when staff makes its approval recommendation, this is what we use. We use the written policy based on Plan El Paso as partly reflected in the staff reports that you guys see prior to every meeting. We also check and make sure that if the proposed development is within an area governed by a study area plan and or overlay district, that the standards of that district are met, and in cases where additional review is required prior to coming to you, that review has occurred. For instance, if you guys were to receive an application within the RIM University Neighborhood Conservancy overlay, the proposal would also go to the City Review Committee for that overlay prior to coming to you. If something lies within a historic overlay district, it also goes to the Historical Committee for their recommendation in addition to going to you. Anything within the mountain development area, if it's a rezoning, it's going to be heard by OSAB for their recommendation as well prior to City Council. We check for compatibility with surroundings. So we look to see what development is already present within an area, specifically focusing on the area within 300 feet. That's within it's a reasonable distance. It's about how far someone can walk in about 10 minutes. It's generally a good proxy for what constitutes a neighborhood. Anything further than that, you're less affected by, generally speaking. We look at the sorts of development that are there. Is what's being proposed similar? We look at the functional classification of the roadway. Is it on a large enough street to support it? This is the information that we take into consideration. And also, of course, we check everything against the applicable standards within Title 20. So now that was staff's role in the process. Now we're going to discuss this commission's role in the process. So your role is to evaluate the information that is presented to you by us that takes the planning subject matter into consideration. You also evaluate in your decision making the information presented by any other interested party in the case, whether that is a neighbor, whether that is the applicant, whether that is any other agency wishing to speak upon the item. And then you take all of the information that you are given for each item before you, and you make a recommendation that you're going to forward to City Council on whether the request ought to be approved or denied based on its consistency with Plan El Paso and the factors that you take into your consideration. So lastly, one thing that does come up a bit is the difference between a conceptual site plan versus a detailed site development plan, because different zoning cases require one or the other. And the main difference to highlight is that a detailed site development plan for a special permit or for new development where required by either ordinance or its zoning district, it's binding. The thing that you see brought before you, if it's a binding detailed site development plan, that is what is going to get built. Deviations go back through the process. Whereas a conceptual plan is a requirement for rezonings that are in our typical residential apartment and commercial districts. And unless there is an ordinance that requires that a detailed site development plan be reviewed and approved by City Plan Commission and or City Council, rezoning requests in these districts are not subject to a binding detailed site development plan. However, the code does require that we bring before you a conceptual plan. A conceptual plan simply illustrates the sort of development that is going to be possible on the site following approval of the rezoning. And again, it could change. It could look completely different. And if it does, then staff's role is to ensure that whatever is proposed instead meets the requirements of Title 20. And we separately have plan review look at it for consistency with the building code. Fire looks at it for consistency with the fire code. Land development looks at it to ensure that all of the stormwater, all of the civil engineering standards are also taken into consideration. So if you see a conceptual plan before you, it is not binding. What is built may look different. It simply illustrates what's possible. If you see a detailed site development plan, that is what is going to be built. We are going to have the applicant sign a development agreement that they will build that thing. And if they are not going to build that thing, then they have to go back through a formal process to have what they want to build instead reviewed and approved. And that is the difference between those two items. And that is also the end of my presentation, and I'm very happy to entertain any questions that you might happen to have.
So if I might jump in real quick for what Ann was mentioning, the reason that a couple of the items that she brought up that she discussed were because of some conversation as well as some clarification we want to bring. Often zoning gets some pretty, if you want to call it passionate discussion, opinions, that's where it normally gets brought up. And with the site plans, that is something that we've seen recently where people get honed in on the conceptual plan. What you'll have to realize is for a rezoning, it's about what is permitted in terms of uses. And did a wonderful job saying, you know what, a conceptual plan is not binding. They can basically change it the moment it gets approved. A detailed site plan is the binding plan. So we just want to make sure that's clear with the members of the City Plan Commission.
You know, in that case, it almost, you wonder why even provide a conceptual site plan if it's completely conceptual and ethereal. Like, I mean, they can change it at a whim. What's the point?
It was council's preference to keep that requirement. We did run through an amendment a couple of years ago to change multiple items. That was one of the proposed changes that staff had brought forward, given feedback that we had received, but it was council's desire to leave that requirement in place. They felt that the information was valuable to them in their decision making.
Okay.
But we just want to make that clear that when these items come up, that a conceptual plan is just that, it's a concept. So just keep that in mind. And we'll probably remind you a lot of times moving forward about these. Just remind that you're not only yourselves, but also the public as well. So thank you for that, Ann. Our final one is Mr. Nelson Ortiz, who will go over the subdivision portion of planning inspections.
Good afternoon. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Perfect. Again, Nelson Ortiz with Planning and Inspections. I am the section's lead planner.
Nelson, sorry to interrupt. If you can try and move it along, we're about to lose a quorum here.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
So we are in subdivisions. We're tasked with obviously completing a number of reviews For the purpose of this presentation, though, I'll be focusing in on the subdivision application reviews and processes, since that's the one that comes before this commission most regularly.
Actually, Nelson, if you don't mind pausing real quick. Commissioner Hernandez, when do you have to leave the meeting?
You can keep going.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. We'll try to move along. Nelson, go ahead. Sorry.
No problem.
Okay, sure. So why does the city have subdivision regulations? So there's obviously a number of reasons why, but the three that I wanted to highlight, the main ones that I wanted to highlight were these on the screen. Obviously, the subdivision and/or development of land as it affects a community's quality of life is an activity where regulation is a valid function of municipal government. The powers for municipalities to have subdivision regulations are granted by the state through the Texas Local Government Code, specifically Chapter 212. Subdivision regulations assists with the orderly, efficient, and coordinated development within city limits and its ETJ. And also it promotes the development and the utilization of land in a manner that assures an attractive and high quality community environment in accordance with our comprehensive plan and the zoning regulations. We want to make sure that any greenfield development, infill development, regardless of the type of development that is proposed in El Paso, that it follows our subdivision regulations to ensure that the appropriate infrastructure is extended to the site. Obviously, we do that by applying our subdivision regulations as well as the recommendations in our comprehensive plan and the zoning regulations as well. Okay, again, it's important for a property owner to follow our regulations when they propose to divide a tract into two or more parts, or when they propose to combine two or more tracts into one lot. Sometimes, and what often occurs as well, a developer will want to create a large residential subdivision, and so they'll propose to construct streets, alleys, squares, they'll dedicate parks, and again, that's done through the subdivision process. Basically, put it in simple terms, you're basically taking raw land, you're going through the subdivision process to come to this particular phase. Once the subdivision process has been completed, then they can move on to their final goal, which is obviously to have get building permits to have a fully constructed residential subdivision. One of the first questions that a property owner should be asking themselves whenever they propose to develop on a piece of property, again, whether greenfield or infill, whether out in the fringes of the city or whether in the city of the city, center of the city, they should always ask themselves whether they need to plat the property first. The way that they do that and figure out whether they need to plat the property is by submitting a platting determination application to us for review. The platting determination, again, is an official determination by the subdivision coordinator on whether platting of a property will be required prior to development. Platting determinations are typically requested by property owners, real estate firms, during one of their representations of property owners, whether it's the seller or the buyer, title companies, law firms, and utility companies. We will conduct our review. We'll examine closely our platting exemptions listed in our ordinance and come up with a determination. Our determinations would be one of the three there, that a plat is required, not required, or that a plat has been reviewed and approved. Once a property owner has gone through the platting determination process and we've told them that a plat is required, then the property owner or its agent will have to commission either a land study or a plat, depending on the scale of their development. Usually a land development is the initial plan. The land study is an initial plan for a subdivision to be developed in phases that delineates the sequence and timing of development within the proposed subdivision. A plat, which you are all familiar with, is a map, drawing, or plan showing the exact layout and proposed construction of a proposed development into one or more lots, blocks, streets, parks, school sites, commercial or industrial sites. And of course, it must be compliant with Title 19. Once once a property owner has hired a surveyor to produce a plat, their next step is submit a 5-day review with the city, which is a preliminary review of a proposed subdivision application to ensure that the application is consistent with all standards of the subdivision code and to provide to the applicant a determination of completeness. The 5-day review is a complementary administrative review process that takes 5 days to complete. Notifications and comments are provided to the applicant. They're informed on the appropriate type of subdivision application. There are 9 different types of subdivision applications, so we will let them know during the 5-day review which is the appropriate subdivision application. Within 45 days of receiving our comments, developer and property owner is required to submit their formal paid application. So our subdivision applications, again, we have 9 different types. Starting off with a minor application, I'll be going into greater detail with these on the following slides, but we have a minor application which consists of both a final and a preliminary plat. This type of application is administrative. We have a major, under the umbrella of a major subdivision, we have major preliminaries, major finals, and major combinations. Major preliminary really just being submission of a preliminary plat, major final being submission and review of a final plat, major combination being submittal of both a preliminary and final plats. We also have, under the umbrella of a re-subdivision, we have the same. We have a re-subdivision preliminary, re-subdivision final, and re-subdivision combination. Additionally, we have amending subdivision applications, again, administrative, and this is a type of a re-subdivision. We have development plats, and then finally, land studies. So starting off with the minor applications, these are simple land divisions that are typically proposed. A minor plat may be submitted when the proposed division results in 4 or fewer lots. All lots in the proposed subdivision front onto an existing public street, and the construction or extension of a street or alley is not required to meet the requirements of Title 19 or any other ordinance, and when the plat does not require the extension of any municipal facilities to serve any law within the subdivision. Additionally, no deviations from Title 19 can be requested through minor applications. As you all know, waivers, exceptions, and modifications are items and requests that have to be approved by the City Plan Commission. So if they're being requested through a minor plat, it's obviously difficult to entertain or come up with a decision on those since the minor applications are administrative.
Nelson, I think Commissioner Hernandez is having to leave. I think in the interest of time, maybe we just postpone this item till the following CPC. I apologize, Nelson. I'll leave it up to Mr. Cummings and the City Plan Commission, but we're about to lose a quorum here.
Okay.
Yeah, my apologies. This is Commissioner Hernandez. I just didn't know we were gonna go this long. It's all very valuable information, and I hate that we have to stop if we lose a quorum. But
Nelson, if we could schedule this the next month or two, I think this is the stuff that I'm really talking about. It's
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We can.
Well, I mean, we have 9 slides to
place
go.
it
I don't know
on-
how long it takes to go 9 slides, but
I'm sorry.
Yeah. What we can do is our next City Plan Commission is actually next week. We're looking at the agenda, and we think we can maybe fit it in on that meeting if the commission so chooses.
I would like that. Do we need to vote on that, or just ask you all to place it there?
I think you have to vote on it. Is Russell? I think we can just place it on the agenda, and we'll put a special item on there for the subdivision review, because this, like you said, Commissioner Cummings, this is an important item that comes to you all on a regular basis.
Kevin, I think we need to go ahead and take a vote on it because we're going to postpone it for the next meeting.
Okay, what we can do then is if you can just postpone this item I believe 4C till the following City Plan Commission, and then we'll pick it up again a week from now, and Nelson can give his full report. So, but like Elsa said, we would need a vote on that.
Okay, can I get a motion to postpone Nelson's presentation till next agenda?
Motion to postpone the agenda for next meeting. Commissioner Guzman.
Second Uribe.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes. Thank you.
But we want to thank you for all this time. I know it's a lot of information, but it's very important to go through. And we'll pick this up again at the following meeting. So thank you, commissioners.
Thank you guys for all the information. It was really, really helpful.
yeah, it is very helpful, very valuable, especially as Commissioner Cummings was saying, kind of learning on the job is what I got. Baptism by fire. You got two binders, and one was for each, and you kind of had to go through it. But anyways, thanks for being willing to postpone that, city staff. Appreciate it.
No, thank you. And then the final item is just the adjournment. So we'll leave that to the commission.
All right. Motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Second, Guzman.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all. Appreciate
Thank
the
you.
vote today.
Thank you,
We'll see you all next time.
I appreciate it.
You guys have a good
Appreciate
week.
everyone. Stay safe. Take care.
Thanks, you too.
Bye.